Hello, everyone. A quick mic check there. There we go. Okay, hello, and welcome to today's DataVox webinar, Enable Safe and Secure Remote Working, presented by Sophos. My name is Jessica, and I will be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this webinar through Cisco WebEx events, and the audio can be heard through your PC or by calling into the phone number listed and with the access code provided in your confirmation email or calendar invite for this event. Today's webinar is being recorded on behalf of DataVox, and participation in this event indicates your consent to being included in that recording. All attendees will receive an email with the link to the completed recording 24 to 48 hours post-event. If you have questions for the presenters at any time during this presentation, you may submit those questions via the Q&A feature to the bottom right of your screen. This should already be turned on. Simply click Q&A and the text box will appear. Our panel will be responding to these questions throughout the presentation via text and verbally at the conclusion of the presentation. If you are in need of support or have a question not pertaining to today's topic, please utilize the chat feature and I will be happy to assist you. This feature is separate from the Q&A feature and can be turned on by clicking the chat bubble in the lower center of your screen. Now that we have reviewed the features of this webinar, we would like to start off today's presentation with a few words. Oh, I think that's great. Sorry, heard a little feedback there from a few words of our VP of Sales, Greg Smith. Greg, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Smith, VP of Sales at DataVox. We appreciate you guys joining us today for the cybersecurity event in partnership with Sophos. As you guys may have heard, and maybe one of the reasons why you've joined us today is that cybersecurity attacks have been at an all-time high as we work through this situation with the COVID outbreak. It's really sad, but it's true, and it's likely to do nothing but increase as the economy suffers dealing with the economic impacts of the pandemic. Just this week, we're starting to see local organizations being impacted by the Maze ransomware attack, which not only spreads across the network, infecting and encrypting every computer in its path, but it also attempts to exfiltrate the data out to the attackers where it's held for ransom, and if the ransom isn't paid, the attackers threaten to publish the data online. Let me work with my audio connection real quick. Hopefully that connection is better. Jessica, can you hear me?
That's much better, Greg.
Yes, thank you.
I heard that the audio connection was, is that better, Jesse?
Yep.
Jesse, is that better?
Yes, that's great.
Jessica, is that better? Okay. I hear that it is. So I had the good fortune of attending the RSA Security Conference just before the COVID outbreak occurred. And I don't know if anybody on the call was at the RSA conference or if you've ever attended another security conference. But if you have, you know there are a lot of security solutions in the market. And you know there are a lot of layers to a comprehensive security strategy. DataVox's approach when consulting with our clients is to try to make the process of creating a strategy a little less daunting by starting with what we consider to be the essential solutions and policies of a multi-layered security strategy. Kind of like an essential business. What are those things that are must-haves for every business, regardless of shape or size? Those include a next-generation application-aware firewall, email and web security, a next-generation security solution, which we're going to hear a lot about today, multi-factor authentication, and a cybersecurity awareness training program. We combine that all together with essential policy and procedure, which includes an infrastructure patching plan, a strong password policy, and a detection and response plan, which is either a person or people within your organization or delivered as a managed service that takes the alerts and data provided by these tools, it stitches it together, and takes action where appropriate. Today, we have Sophos here to provide us some insight into their multi-layered approach and how they make security easy. And one of the ways that Sophos makes it easy is because they provide integrated solutions that address almost all of DataVox's essential security requirements. Sophos is a leader in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for endpoint security, and Sophos is a security partner that DataVox has certified and standardized on for our managed services offering. With that said, over to you, Mike and Jesse with Sophos.
Thanks, Greg. All right, let's pull up our slides here. Hope everybody is doing well this morning. My name is Mike Bedard. I'm the Channel Account Executive with Sophos. We're excited to be here this morning to talk to you about enabling safe and secure remote working. With me today to do a majority of the presentation is Jesse Gibbons, my sales engineer, who's tied to me. I've been with the company for about 9 years, and Jesse has been with the company a little over 3 years. Funny stories, we actually met, he was one of my customers, and took me a long time to get him to come work for the winning team, but we finally got him. And he's very aware of some of the struggles out there with getting, setting up people from working from home and keeping secure. So I think you're going to enjoy what you see today. You want to go to the next slide, Jesse? Just a quick overview for those of you who aren't familiar with Sophos. We've been a company for 35 years, probably the best kept secret in the industry up until the last like 5 or 6 years, where we really decided to ramp up our marketing, but not only that, really kind of change the landscape of what the company does. So as Greg said, we're going to show you and talk to you a lot about what we do to kind of mitigate that threat landscape. We have about 3,500 employees, 400,000 plus customers. We're a worldwide company. So we have 100 million users in 150 different countries. So very good sprawl. Probably the secret sauce to Sophos is our Sophos Labs threat research facilities that are basically across the globe. This really is the back end of everything that you get from Sophos. There's many large companies that actually OEM the service from us, because we really are the best in the industry. And we consider ourselves a channel first company, meaning we work with all your favorite technology resellers like DataVox, who, and DataVox is one of our #1 partners here in the Texas area. So let's take a look at a quick agenda. There we go. All right, so 4 main points we're going to go over today. Making it easy, fully protecting your devices, and more importantly, users. The overall awareness, and just best practices for users that are working from home, which we've all come accustomed to over the last month. Some of us, it may have been some changes, some of us it might not. And just a quick little funny story here. As Jesse and I started talking about what we were going to show you today, I said, isn't everybody going to think that this is all common sense? And then we started putting it together, and I was like, wow, this is not all common sense. So I think everybody should see some value here, and we hope that you enjoy everything. And please remember that if you do have questions, we have the chat where you can just type in some questions, and we'll be glad to answer them. Jesse, I'm going to throw it to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So hopefully this all goes off swimmingly. There's never any issues with remote webinars like this, right? So we'll try to keep it a little lighthearted too. We're going to focus on, kind of some of the basics going into it with the first couple of points, and then the awareness piece at the end. I think is going to be a really valuable bit of information for you guys, because that's going to get into more of what we're seeing. Mike had mentioned Sophos Labs, definitely a big part of what we do behind the scenes. And I'm going to give you guys some links at the end as well that you're more than welcome to keep, copy, screenshot, because it's stuff for informational stuff on our site, the type of threats we're seeing right now, the type of scams that we're seeing right now. We're going to show you some real world examples that get pretty nasty as far as how sneaky they're getting. And they're really trying to leverage, everything that's going on right now. They're taking advantage of, plugging in on the fear factor of everything, and really trying to exploit, just the human nature side of this. So we'll touch on that as well, because that's, like Greg had said, a big part of it is the layered security piece ahead of that, but also that user piece. I kind of put the user piece in parentheses there about, that is another part that we need to focus on and be aware of. is that a lot of your users now, they're not sitting at the desk, behind the desk 9 to 5 anymore. They're at home. They're doing things remotely. So their lives have been shaken up quite a bit, and you're not necessarily sitting behind the firewall anymore, things like that. So there's ways that this changes the whole formula that we're also going to kind of take into account and make sure we cover today. The first thing, really, make it easy. I think we all are pretty aware, whether you're in the IT side or not, if you don't make it easy for the users, they will find a way. And then that way it may not necessarily be your standard policy. Whatever application you're pushing for the users to use, they'll find something that they can do. Sharing files, right? If you don't make it easy to share files, are they going to use email? Are they just going to go download Dropbox and now they're sharing stuff on Dropbox or some other unsupported app? Maybe you guys are 365 shop and you're using OneDrive, things like that. You kind of want to focus that in and narrow them down to, yes, you want to make it easy, but you also want to have a little, get a little bit of control over what's going on so you don't start getting into the shadow IT area of all these apps that are being used. You have no idea they're out there, because one of the things we'll get into, a big part of the keeping things safe is going to be the update and patching part of this as well. The first piece, as far as making it easy, touched on this a second ago, cloud storage is probably one of the biggest things. Mike and I, when we were working on this presentation, just to kind of funny how things we discovered about our own, how we have been set up at Sophos, using OneDrive. And I had never noticed there was a feature in OneDrive where you could be in there at the same time simultaneously and it shows edits and everything. So, you learn stuff along the way, right? So it was a pretty cool little feature. Make sure, get that information out there, right? Make sure you have some sort of template going into it. And when you're setting up the plan for the remote work for your users, let them know, say, hey guys, yes, you can still use email internally. If you want to share something externally, we do have your OneDrive set up, or whatever the case may be, whatever solution you guys have something. Because if you don't, again, if it's not easy, they're gonna turn around and they're gonna find a way on their own. So it's definitely one thing to keep in mind. Whatever pieces that you're using to achieve the solution for the users, make sure it's easy for them to use. Next piece is securing that information. This is probably one of the big pieces, right? How are you going to secure their communication back right now? So you're looking at things like, VPN, obviously is the big one. That's the one we've been using for years. Direct access from Microsoft is a new one that's kind of came out here recently. We used to use that. We kind of still use a little bit. And then we'll get into kind of a newer idea in the next slide here, but really securing the information back, whether it be, you make sure everything's using HTTPS, secure the connection there, make sure you're using maybe SSL VPN or something like that to secure the connection back to the home office. Always have that thought in mind of, are we doing this in a secure way and not a way that's necessarily open to something that's susceptible to being attacked itself. One way some folks are kind of shifting their vision of this whole process. One, obviously through the left there on the apps, right? If you can secure an app and make an app to do something, awesome, right? It makes it simple for the users. It makes it intuitive enough because that's what they do on their phone every day, right? So if you can tie into that, you can't make it much more easier than that. Folks are going to love that. They're going to use it and make your life a lot easier. The next part, two-factor, right? If you're doing some sort of authentication, right, you want to, and this kind of goes back into securing the connection as well. If you're making a web app for your users, how do they connect to that? They just log into a website and type in a password. Okay, well, passwords can get, stolen, brute force, whatever the case may be. Someone may just give up their password through a scam. Then you start looking at things like two-factor and Duo and those types of services that will give you the ability to send a text to the phone to confirm it's that person. So you definitely want to consider two-factor in the equation. But now you're starting to get into the whole debate of, from a security perspective, convenience versus security, right? Those are like two opposing forces that it's always a struggle. That's always something at the end of the day, you got to talk with management, talk with don't just go into it saying, we're doing this because it's the way to go. You got to meet them halfway. And if you don't try to meet them halfway, then whatever you implement is probably going to fail. So that's always the thing to keep in mind, is there is the user side of this. What you need to consider, kind of what their experience is going to be, what it's going to do to them. Just make sure they're educated. That's always the big piece of it too, is just make sure they have the information, right? If you just drop it on somebody, feels kind of forced, and they may be a little more resistant. And if you talk to folks and again, meet them halfway, that can really go a long way to smooth things out and make sure you're achieving what you want to achieve at the same time. And we all want to make sure these things are secure. One thing we're doing from this perspective is something called Zero Trust. We are running a pilot program right now where we're using like a mobile management app, which a lot of the mobile management apps now, we have one at Sophos Mobile Control, where it's kind of it's going away from, we can still manage phones with these types of products. That's typically where they came from, how they started. But now, because Apple and because of Microsoft are opening up the OS to give us the ability to manage these things a little more, actually manage them. So think of it as, your current setup, your users are using a domain-connected computer, using group policies to push things out. This is kind of getting in there and helping you with that for those machines that, like right now, aren't on the network. They're not behind the domain unless they're on the VPN. So with Zero Trust, we can kind of sever that cord a little bit and give you the ability to manage those devices like you want to manage them as as IT staff, but not be so intrusive for the user to make the experience, a hindrance to them getting their job done. So what we're doing, how we kind of have it set up, is my laptop is not even connected to the domain. I'm not on the domain. I work from home all the time, being field sales. We use two-factor. We got Duo. We have all that stuff set up, but we also now have a management layer with a management app. That app is what basically authenticates and ties it back to the network. So IT can do patch assessment, see if I'm missing some sort of critical update, push those updates to me, push some sort of software package to me. But at the same time, I could probably get to the point where a new employee comes on board and they say, instead of giving you a computer, we're going to give you an allowance, and this is your allowance to go buy one. Whatever you want, we don't care what it is. As soon as you get it, install this app, plug in a password, set up Duo or whatever, give them like some instructions for the initial setup, and boom, they're connected back to your network. So it's definitely, once you start getting to that realm where you're cutting those cords a little bit, you want to make sure you have something like a next-gen the endpoint software there, because then that becomes crucial, because you're now not necessarily having the direct management of the device, but you want to make sure they're protected. So once you do that part and the protection part's covered, you're good, right? They're getting the patches from the management software, through some sort of, like our product with our Sophos endpoint is cloud-based, so it doesn't have to backhaul over VPN. And that's kind of the trend, is, all these new types of solutions are looking at ways to do it besides VPN, because sometimes the users don't get on the VPN and they don't get a policy update for 2 months, and then they fall off the domain, and that causes all sorts of other issues, right? So it's a way to start looking at the problem with a solution, non-traditional solution, essentially is what we're looking at there. So pretty cool stuff. Definitely, it's definitely a trend, right? We're running our own pilot program now, so it's something you may hear more about. I think the term Zero Trust is kind of the one that's out there, the marketing buzzword for this. So definitely keep an ear out for that. And we'll touch more on the endpoint piece here in a second, as far as how we're going to ensure they're fully protected, right? If you are in this environment where people are not on the domain, they're not getting all these updates like they normally would, how do we do that? So a couple ways we can do that. One, again, with some sort of, you may be familiar with something like Intune, and we have Sophos Mobile Control, these types of things that are connecting them back to over the web to get those updates and things that they need, because you're going to start seeing stuff like this. Sample email from Sophos Labs that we've seen, where someone's basically trying to get them to download that attachment, and that attachment is probably an exploit-based attack of some kind, ransomware of some kind, pick your poison, pretty much. This is pretty much how they get the stuff out to the folks these days. One way, right? So emails, we'll see here in a second, the percentage, it's upwards of about 33%. Web's a big part of it, and then even down to, little thumb drives and stuff, picking up, people bringing in stuff externally. This piece here specifically, this is where we see a lot of the exploit-based attacks. So user opens up this attachment, it then gives the hackers access. There's tools like TrickBot that then give them access to things like the RDP access. Greg had mentioned earlier the maze that's out there. They're leveraging getting someone's password and getting into RDP. So a lot of things like that sometimes it's a cumulative thing, right? This is the first step. This is the first way they get in. And then once they're in, then they can leverage that tool to start doing other things. Good example is the tool TrickBot. If you've heard of that, they'll try to use something like this. They'll try to phish a user. get them to run this app or get them to launch that file. That file installs a tool called TrickBot. TrickBot then gives them a persistent connection to your network. It lets them begin to start scraping passwords and pretty much open the door, right? Open the floodgates from there. We've seen some instances where they've even seen our software getting installed. They were actually during a migration from another product, and when they saw they saw Sophos being installed, they launched their ransomware because they knew, and they were in there because of that tool TrickBot. So they had TrickBot installed months before through an exploit-based attack like this, and when they saw the old product getting removed and Sophos getting installed, they launched the ransomware. So I take that as that's a good recommendation, good thumbs up from the hackers. When they were seeing our stuff getting installed, they freaked out and tried to get things done at that point. So it's definitely a big part of what we're seeing these attacks come from is something like this. And to touch on it real quick of the update, the patching part of this, why these types of attacks are successful is, one, you don't have something like Sophos that has exploit-based protection or some sort of deep learning engine, pre-execution scan of files, the signature lists, all the advanced features that we can do with scanning, but they really prey on the fact that you're especially right now, having the ability for you guys to deploy patches, right? Patch Tuesday rolls around, Microsoft says, here's 15 patches you got to push out. Hackers get that same information, and they've taken those 15 things and they look at it and say, okay, here's 15 new vulnerabilities that we now know everyone has. And especially right now, if you don't have a good update policy in place, you're even more susceptible to this than before. They'll look at the known list of exploits and say, okay, this exploit can use this vulnerability, and I now have a zero-day attack. And there you go. That's pretty much how they respond. And best way to protect yourself is to patch all the time, every second, as soon as something comes out. But then you got to think about patches that are out there for days and days and days that no one even knows about, or vulnerabilities, that are out there that no one knows about. So it gets pretty nasty pretty quick, and that's why they use these types of attacks. So patch, always patch. But then that goes back to our previous conversation of, in this environment that we find ourselves in now, how do you do that, right? If they're not on the VPN, and how do I deploy patch? Do you just tell them to update everything, download all Windows updates right away? But then you start looking at, well, that's just Windows, right? They have Adobe, Java, browsers, everything else that you have, all those other apps still need patched as well, because every single vendor has to release those vulnerabilities whenever they find them. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is it's not just we use Windows because it's a big one, but everyone else too, all the other software that's out there, you got to take into consideration. One method always is to look at your attack vectors, where things are coming in, and try to shrink the attack surface. So to stop stuff from getting there in the first place. 33% of attacks come in via email. We're probably looking at close to that, a little more from the web, and then 10 to 15% come in through things like thumb drives and other external sources. So the email is a big one, especially right now, because pretty much everybody. I don't know how much we used our phones before, but I guarantee you probably a ton more email going on right now. It's just a big way to communicate how we do business. So hackers know that, so they're going to leverage this as a method to get things in. So you want to have some sort of good spam filtering in place, even some sort of sandboxing. Look at those attachments when they come in. As something is coming in, if it does have an attachment, do a quick scan on it before it gets to the user. We have a Sandstorm is what we call our solution in our email product, where we'll actually look at the file. Have we seen it before? Do we know it's good? Yeah, we know that's good. That one's good. We've seen it before. Let it through. Or we immediately see it. Say, no, we've seen this. This is bad. Delete the attachment and let the admin and the user know. Or if we've never seen it, then we do it in a sandbox and we take a look at it and see what it's going to do. So something like that's real crucial to stopping these things from coming in, along with all the other spam, filtering features and things you've known over the years. Another thing that we're seeing right now too is like VIP, elevating let us know who your VIPs are, so they can provide some extra little protections against those, because one of the things you see is spear phishing, where a specific user is targeted, or a specific account is used to spoof all your users and make it look like it's coming from the CFO. Hey, here's a new price sheet, or here's a new widgets list, or whatever. And their LinkedIn signature, their LinkedIn picture, and stuff like that. We see it. Our Sophos Labs team sees that all the time. It's definitely one of the things. They get pretty sneaky with that stuff, and it works, or else they wouldn't do it, right? So that kind of gets us to the phishing subject in general. going back to how super important it is to patch your systems, update your AV, make sure you're using the right type of AV protection. But as far as phishing goes, that's often the one thing that's overlooked. How do you stop phishing attacks? One of the ways to do it, that's often overlooked, is you educate your users. How do you educate your users? Some sort of phish simulation software is a great start. We have one called PhishThreat, where you can set up a campaign and phish your users in a safe environment, but using real-world examples. Our Sophos Labs team populates this with actual stuff that we see in the wild. So it's going to be legit. It's going to be relevant to the times, kind of a thing. Target. We had a Target one. We had a Marriott one when Marriott got breached. Anytime we see that in the news, or anytime we're reporting that on ourselves, within a few days, we're going to have a template in there for you guys to do that. And that is addressing the security issue 2 feet behind the keyboard, the users, because they're the ones clicking on everything. So if you're not helping to educate them to identify this stuff, you're only looking at one part of the equation. So you definitely need to keep in mind that there's a whole other side of that equation where you want to educate your users, help them identify that, and these phishing simulations are a good way to do it. Because we make them sneaky, but we also make it a little clear enough so that they should be able to pick this stuff up. And then you can associate training with those attacks. So here you go. Right, here's your training to help you guys identify this stuff further down the road. Historical tracking is always a big thing, because you want to know how well people are doing. And even go so far as to give them a report button. Say, hey, if you think this is spam, click this button. And then that goes back into give your folks a way to report stuff in general during these times. Make sure they understand. Here's the number you call. Here's an email address you use. Here's how you get a hold of us to tell us if you see something. Because they're the boots on the ground right out there in the world. So if they're seeing something that you think that you need to know, make sure they know how to get a hold of you. And make sure they know how to transmit that data to you guys so you have it. That's always a big part. So this then ties into awareness, right? So good segue for the awareness side, where we're gonna have a little fun, I think, with this. Maybe a little eye-opening for some folks if you haven't been paying attention to some of these things. It's definitely it's going to be some pretty cool stuff that we show you here. This is data coming from our Sophos Labs team, and then a couple links here. Again, this is what I was saying earlier. If you want to write these down, take a screenshot real quick. Absolutely. So the first one, Naked Security, with the tag COVID-19. These are all of our articles on our Naked Security blog site that relate to the current epidemic. The next one is our news site. So the difference between Naked Security and news, Naked Security is going to be more a little in-depth. You might see some code. You might see some more in-depth dive to what's going on, whereas the news side is going to be more of a general news. The link here, the second link, though, is to all the COVID malware stuff that we're seeing and all the actual scams and giving you actual examples. And we're going to look at a couple of those here in a second. And then the last one is just kind of some general tips, 5 tips. Kind of like what we've talked about today, and we'll touch on a few at the end. But more of a bigger write-up, right? We're kind of doing this in a presentation format for you guys. This is just a link to an article to give you the steps one by one. That first link, though, going to the Naked Security site to look at all the COVID-19 tagged items, just kind of give you an idea, right? It's updated pretty frequently, but also this is just in general too, not just COVID-19 stuff. I highly recommend folks to bookmark this, bookmark it, or sign up. Like put your email in for the newsletter. I do it. I work here and I do it because it's good information. I get an email once a day saying here's what we're seeing in the security landscape. So it's a pretty valuable tool if you just want to kind of keep up on things. Highly recommend checking that out and putting in on that one, putting your email in on that one. So let's start getting into some of the stuff that we're seeing in the real world. New SSL certificates and host names, right? Pretty self-explanatory there at the top. With COVID-19 or Corona in the name. Blue line is for the previous year. Green line is from the end of part of 2019 to now. You can see, right, last year, Corona was probably there was really no COVID-19, probably anything until December-ish timeframe, but a lot of Corona, some Corona stuff, right? That term was around, but you notice in the green line, right around December, that little uptick that starts from December to January. And then, as these hockey stick graphs always tend to do, they hit a certain point where it just shoots up. And that happened in February. So from February until now, we've had close to 5,000 registered certificates or host names with these two terms in them. I'd say some are probably legit, but you might be thinking, yeah, a lot of these are not legit. They're going to be totally malicious, and they're putting it in there. This is what they do, right? To make these attacks and make these scams, make these phishing attempts look legit. Here you go. Here's how they do it, right? They'll put the stuff in the name to try to really fool your users. So again, the awareness side, the training side, that is the biggest way to combat some of this stuff, in addition to having the security to stop it once it gets to that point. But if you can stop it before it even gets there, that's a good spot to focus on as well. So now we have a little fun. World Health, the WHO site, right? This is the real site. This is the legit site for WHO. And here is a password phishing site that we've seen in the wild. Notice the background there. Besides the URL, we've blocked that out at the top. But yeah, right, we're going back and forth. It's ridiculous. I mean, this is the level they'll go to. And you may be thinking, well, my users don't have a password to this site. Why do I care? We're creatures of habit. If you're not using a password, some sort of password vault to do crazy random passwords, which is a good tip, your folks are probably using the same password in quite a few sites, and hackers know this. So they don't necessarily have to breach one specific site and get the passwords for that site and break in and try to hack the database to get the passwords out of there. They could just go to the dark web and buy a password list. And there's a good chance a lot of the passwords on that, it's going to be for that user's email. That's a pretty common thing. They're going to use that email address on a lot of sites, and the user's password. Okay. Again, creatures of habit. We're going to use that password on a lot of different sites. That's why unique passwords are good. Because if you plug this, if your user just accidentally isn't really processing or whatever, had to have their coffee that morning, and they go ahead and plug in that info, they now know, hey, there's a good chance this combination of password and username for this user has been used somewhere else. And that's the goal here, is to get that information, put it in a database, and they want to make some money on it. They sell it on the dark web. So that's how you get that's one quick and easy way for your information to get out there pretty fast. So this one here, the phone side of things, right? This gets into something we talk about later, where one of the tips is, never actually go to a site to download an app, because you can see this is an actual app. This is COVID-19 tracker app. This popped up a little right around the time. That's one of the things South Korea did. One of their methods they used to help track things is they had an app on people's phones, and they could basically let people know, hey, this person, with, I guess, getting too detailed, but they were using the phones and using an app on the phone to track who was sick and who wasn't. That's where this comes from, right? So this type of stuff is definitely related to that. But as you can see, it's downloading the app from a website. Always use the stores as much as possible, and even try to have some sort of AV, right? We have our Intercept product. We have Sophos for Intercept on mobile. You can put it on a phone, and it's going to give you the security on the phone as well. Folks are going to download this, and what's going to happen, right? It's going to try to install. They're going to think it's a good thing to have it, right? There's a lot of stuff out there right now that's crazy in the world. There's stories about bleach and microwaves, so it's not too far of a leap to for someone to download this and put it on their phone. What happens when you do? Right? You're going to get a message like this. So this is part of something we're seeing a trend. We're calling it Sextortion, where they're using the scare tactics, right? We have all the pictures you've ever taken on your phone, where you get this on your computer. I've hacked your webcam. I've seen all the stuff you've been looking at. These are emails and things that we're seeing them come out with, and they're saying send us Bitcoin, basically. So this is legit what happens with that app when you install it and you try to run it. It asks for all the permissions, right? We want to let this app run in the background, let it access your apps. And when you start, users start doing it, because, again, creatures of habit, that's pretty much what folks are doing these days. They just enable this stuff, turn it on, and say yes, yes, yes. I mean, how many have ever read the EULA, right? So you're going to click through a lot of that stuff and let it do it. Unfortunately, on the back end, it now has pretty much access, carte blanche to your phone. So what will happen next? Enter the decrypt code. So this is a funny one because it's not actually encrypting everything. It's just trying to lock them out so they can't get access, making it look like the device is actually encrypted. And they're wanting you to basically give them some Bitcoin and to give the code. Fortunately, these folks, they weren't the sharpest tool in the shed, because you can see right there in the code, this is from our Sophos Labs team, they actually hard-coded it in there. So we love it when they do things like this. It makes our jobs a lot easier. But that code is literally embedded into the software itself. So it's always funny when we see things like that. It happens every now and then. They get a little lazy. And really, they're just, throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks pretty much with this. Someone is going to do this. They don't care if it's 15% of the people that get this app. Okay, that's, if they're asking for $1,000 or $2,000, $5,000, whatever the case may be, they got their money, right? All they had to do is push an app out there and put a website up. That's it. So it's just it's a numbers game to them pretty much. So. So now we're going to get into a couple of best practices, kind of how, some of the things that's from our perspective, just in general, kind of what we can see, and then also, kind of some specific things that we can see. Change the default password on your router at home, right? You'd be surprised how much that probably hasn't been done. Just default passwords in general, right? The default password on your home router, things like that. Just little things here and there that you can do to go a long way to help secure. There's another thing, the WPS, the push button feature on the routers. There's been some vulnerabilities and stuff found in that. So just little things that you might be able to recommend. I know that you get into some stuff. Some of your users may not even be capable of really going that far. It's just one of those things. Try it, and it helps. It's a big help, definitely, when you got everybody working from home now. It's not that this may not have been a big issue before, just simply because there wasn't as many people home before. The thing to remember with all this is that everything's shifted, everything's changed. How we do things have changed, so now it's an arms race. And it's always an arms race with hackers and with the folks that are looking to exploit this stuff. So they react to the environment, and that's exactly what they're doing here. Strong passwords, right? We touched on this earlier with the WHO, the password scraping site. If you have that, if that user enters that password for that site, and that's the same password they've used on 50 other sites, and that name gets put in, their info gets put into a database, and that database gets sold on the dark web. There you go. Right? That password is now out there. So unless you're changing it every now and then, I know there's always been the back and forth of, if you tell people to change their password every 3 months, it just ends up as a post-it note on their desk, right? So it's a give and take. There's got to be something that you can do to work with the users and just find out kind of what your environment may be different, right? I've worked in places where they screamed at me the second I tried to change passwords, and then I worked in other environments where they were like, "You must do it every month." So just work with the management, kind of set those expectations. But that is probably one of the biggest ones right now, is making sure your passwords are strong and secure. And then we touched on this earlier, the updates. Can't say enough about updates and patches, right? Get that stuff pushed out as much as possible, so that you can make sure your devices are ready to go. Mike, you have any? Yeah, hold on, Mike. Mike's mic is not on. Next one here, real quick. Some additional tips from us. So back on one of the previous slides, I had the 5 tips, and this.
Can you hear me now, Jesse?
There we go.
Sorry about that.
All good.
All right, I'll go through the easy slide.
There you go.
So yeah, just a few additional tips, which again, these are the ones that when you're in the security business, your heightened awareness is there. So we're going to share this stuff with you. So first and foremost, we've all gotten those emails from our bank or basically any site, maybe your healthcare site or something, where it'll give you, hey, this has changed about your account. Log in. Please don't do that. Don't log in from an email or a text or anything that gives you a link. If it truly is your bank saying, hey, there's been some changes to your agreement, go to their actual website and log in from there. Okay, that's the safest way to do it. Don't make payments via links or emails or text or anything like that. Again, kind of the same principle. If you're paying a bill or one of your utilities sends you an email, just go to their site. If you're not sure, make an actual phone call. Don't just click on the link and enter in bank information or anything like that. Also, don't turn off security features just because a document tells you to. So especially in a work environment, if something is saying, hey, this has to be turned off for something else to work, make sure you contact maybe your internal IT department or if it is just on your home machine, you definitely should be skeptical if anything's telling you to turn off security in order to make something work. And then don't trust apps. Apps are a part of everybody's life these days, right? I mean, you probably have hundreds of apps that you've used throughout, you owning a smartphone, but don't trust it just because the app creator tells you to trust them with your data. Your data is the most important piece in your life, right? And so protect that. Don't just trust, these developers when they tell you that don't worry about it, you can enter your creds and you're good to go. So be skeptical is really the number one thing. If something doesn't look right or it looks too easy, it probably isn't right. And if it's too easy, I would question that too. Oh, is that thunder?
that hit like right outside my window. Yeah, so it's storming here in Austin. Wow, that was loud. So yeah, that's the great point though on the end one there. Don't trust the apps. The reviews, right? You can buy that stuff. You can go out and buy reviews and pay someone $50 and they'll do that review for them and they'll give you a bunch of 5 stars and all that kind of stuff. So just be aware of that. Maybe Google it and see and just kind of get some outside verification just based off what you see on that page. The security thing though, the turn off security features, that's still one of the most common ways. That previous email, the email example we looked at, showed an actual attachment being downloaded. In that one case, there was an attachment at the bottom. They're counting on the users to pull that stuff up, and then you must hit the enable security button to make sure this file works right, or to calculate formulas. It gives them an action item, reason why they need to do it, and they think, okay, I need to do that to make this file work. And they click it, and you just launch your ransomware. That's still a really common way we see stuff getting in through the apps, and that's how they can bypass some of the security. So anti-exploit technology is real important at that point, because it's going to be looking for that exploit code, like within our Intercept product that we have, where it'll at the runtime take a look at what's actually trying to run, identify the exploit, and be able to stop the attack based off of that. Everything so far, we got to the point here. We got a few minutes left for Q&A.
Okay. There's a couple of questions that have come in along the way on the Q&A. We can address those here. So there was a couple that were both related to multi-factor authentication. One just asking for you to expand on it, and is that just another layer to the security portfolio? And the other one was related to whether Sophos has a product in that space. So I don't know, Jesse or Mike, do you want to take that?
Jesse, you can take that.
Yeah, so we're looking at the VPN connection.
The multi-factor authentication. Does Sophos have a product in that space, and can you expand on what multi-factor authentication provides to customers?
Sure. So I wish we had some. One of the things I always looking at something like Duo in that space. We don't have anything right now. I haven't heard anything as far as roadmap items that's something we're looking at. That is definitely something that could fit into this space, absolutely, as far as the security realm goes. Because what that'll give you from a multi-factor authentication perspective is it's adding another layer, right? Kind of our philosophy just from our security software is do things in layers. We have a deep learning engine, we have anti-exploit. So we're giving you we're setting multiple points to pick something up. Same thing with authentication, because that process, again, someone can scrape a password from a site. So you want to make sure folks aren't maybe getting redirected to a bad site, or someone's trying to brute force, right? They bought one of those databases off of the dark web, and they now have a list of passwords, and they're trying to figure out if they can get into a system. That system has two-factor authentication enabled, then it pretty much eliminates that whole process, that whole method of getting in, because beyond just putting in your password, you're going to get a Duo prompt on your phone, or you're going to get a text message on your phone, right? It's going to do a second layer of authentication to ensure that that's you. And that's one way to kind of keep out folks and the hackers from trying to do some sort of brute force attack.
Jesse, as far as VPN connections go, maybe we can talk a little bit about red devices.
Yes, so a couple ways we can go about doing that. obviously, yeah, it's a VPN agent of some kind. We get into the discussion of the zero trust. If that's like one of the ideas that are being kicked around, we have our mobile control, which Sophos mobile control, which helps you get access still linked to those systems, even though they may not be on the domain like a traditional setup, right? It's giving you another avenue to still have the manageability of the devices. That's one way we can do it. And then through our firewalls, we have a actual VPN agent that you can run that give them, SSL VPN. You install it on the computer. It gets a configuration file. They just double click it and it dials back home to the firewall. And then I have VPN access. And then the other piece, like Mike had mentioned, is REDs, remote Ethernet devices. If you have a location with a few people or a C-level, something like that, where you can basically get a little box. It's kind of like looks like a little wireless router, kind of like the little square guy back here on my desk. They just plug it in, and it's pre-configured so it knows to dial home. And they just plug in an Ethernet connection, and then they have kind of a few ports on the back that they can plug their device into, or have a wireless connection to give them wireless access to the RED. But that RED just basically sets the tunnel up back home. And it gives them immediate access without having to go through a bunch of configuration. That's the point of this. Remember step one, make it easy. Something like this makes it easy. You want to make it as easy as possible for folks to do this stuff.
I think that's the end of the Q&A, Mike. I'll just follow up on the multi-factor authentication. Although that's not a product that's in Sophos's portfolio, that's a really critical component. I mentioned that earlier as one of DataVox's essential security solutions. If you guys today, if in your organization you can remotely access your network or any of your critical applications with only a password and nothing to prompt the user to identify that it's actually them, it's a really, really risky spot to be in. So definitely want to look at that and get with your DataVox representative or with Jessica, and we can follow up with you on that component specifically. Appreciate it, Sophos team. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for those that joined us today. We're having a series of webinars. You probably saw that as you registered for this event. Please continue to go back to that webinar page. We continue to add topics that we think are relevant for the time and topics that come from your feedback. So please provide us feedback as to what you'd like to see next, and we'll try to deliver that content to you. I did want to highlight a couple of webinars that are security related and that are happening tomorrow. One of those is at 9:30 in the morning. We're hosting a deeper dive session on one of the security layers, which is cybersecurity user awareness training. So if your organization doesn't have a user awareness training program in place or you're not happy with it, please dial into that. We'll dig a little deeper on that topic, both why you want it and how you roll it out. And then at 2 p.m. tomorrow, we're fortunate enough to have an ex-FBI cybersecurity expert presenting on trending security topics in partnership with HP. So 9:30 a.m. tomorrow, 2 p.m. tomorrow, some really, really good security content as a follow-on to this event. So please join us for that.
Thank you so much, Greg. You took my closeout away from me. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining today's webinar. As a reminder, the recording link for today's session will be emailed to all attendees 24 to 48 hours post-event. If you did enjoy today's session, as Greg mentioned, and would like to hear, if you'd like to hear more on after today's session, as Greg mentioned, we do offer new webinars weekly. Please check our DataVox website for more information on upcoming sessions. And as always, we again would love to hear your feedback. Once this webinar has ended, you will be redirected to a survey page. If you could please take a moment to complete the survey before closing out your browser, we would greatly appreciate it. That concludes our session for today. Thank you again to Mike and Jesse for a great presentation, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.